And to start off the new year 2025 with an absolute bang, this whole video is sponsored by none other than Honkai Starrail. They basically messaged me and were like, hey, we have this really amazing character coming out and we want you to make a doll of her. And that's right, today we are going to make the absolute waifu witch, the Herta. This project is going to be an incredible challenge, and to make things even harder for me, I decided that I wanted to match her to my other Honkai Starrail doll, Ruan Mei. You might remember her. That means that I'm going to be making the Herta 3 foot tall. Oh boy. Luckily, I had some amazing help from my friend Blue Pixie again, who sculpted Herta's face and all of her intricate ornamental accessories and her shoebases for me. And my friend Frosty was so nice and printed the majority of the doll in filament again. So since there's a bunch of stuff to do, let's not wait any longer and conquer this project. Alright, so since the doll is going to be 3 foot tall in the end, I once more commissioned my friend Frosty to print the doll for me in filament, but I told him not to print the hands and the face because I want to print the face in resin, and I want to give her some jointed hands actually that I'm also going to be printing in resin. So how about we unbox the doll body and then get the face and the hands printed so we can spray paint soon. Okay, so as you can see here, I have one little bowl for each of the hands so that I don't mix up all the parts. And before we are going to spray paint all the doll parts, I decided I want to string the hands first because I don't trust myself with not losing any of these teeny tiny pieces during the spray painting process. And to do so, I'll be using some elastic. I only had yellow in the size, but it won't be visible anyways. To string the hands, I first need to sort all the pieces to make sure to correctly string each finger, which was not that easy as the pieces weren't labeled anywhere. So I had to rely on my eyes and comparing the pieces to the named files, but made it work in the end. And with the sorted pieces, I then start stringing the hands using my elastic and basically thread one end through a whole finger and loop it at the top piece. Thread it back to the palm piece and then thread the elastic through the next finger. It's really finicky, but having a bigger doll lets you have perks like this, which I think is super cool. When all the fingers are strung, I then just tie the elastic around the loop inside of the wrist piece and pull it really tight, snap off the excess elastic and have 2 beautifully jointed hands. And with those done, we can now finally spray paint the doll and assemble her. The assembled doll really puts into perspective just how big this whole project is going to be. What was I thinking? Oh god. But I am excited, so let's start with the wig, shall we? I bought this silver wig on Amazon and it has the perfect shade, so I first need to remove almost all the wefts of it so I can then use them for making the doll wig. That always takes a while.
Surprise transition! So as you can see, I made her a wig cap off cam already, and now with all the wefts removed from the wig, we can start building her wig. And I will start on the back of her head and just glue the whole back of her head first, before we are going to do the complicated stuff that's going on in the front. Although in the back there's also a bit of complicated stuff, because as you can see there is like some braiding going on. So let's do this back stuff first before we do the front stuff, and hopefully make a nice looking wig.
When the back of the head was filled up completely, I decided to crimp the hair this time to give it a little more volume and texture. I recently learned from cosplay wig makers that crimping lets you style the hair much easier, so I really wanted to try it this time. When I crimp everything, it looks like this. Since I will be styling the back of the hair, the crimp waves won't be too visible later on. To make Herta's hairstyle in the back, I start braiding a little braid on top and then add some more hair as I go, before adding a little hair tie. Then I take 2 more hair strands like this and add another hair tie in a little distance below the first one, and then repeat the step once again for the last hair tie. The finished hairstyle already looks really cool, which means that we can now make the front of the wig. To do so, I decided to glue 2 wefts for Herta's bangs first, so I can then make sure that the bangs will have the right shape in the end. I then also started to glue her sideburns and style everything in place as I go. I carefully trim the hair to the correct lengths, spray them with hairspray and mold them in shape. The crimping actually really helped here, and I had such an easier time styling this wig thanks to it. Of course, I have to repeat the whole thing on the other side of the wig as well, and also carefully and slowly start trimming the bangs shorter. This always gives me a little bit of a heart race, because if I cut them too short, the whole wig will be ruined. To finish off the wig, I will just use the parting piece of the wig I harvested, glue it on top of the wig, and then distribute, cut and style the hair of it until I am satisfied. In the end, I just add the little details like the ribbons in the back and her little hair ties in the front of the wig, and to make the gradient in her hair, I decided to airbrush it with a beautiful shade of purple. Why do I always forget to wear gloves when painting things? With this final step, the wig is done and I'm actually really proud of it. Anime hairstyles are not that easy, but I love learning new techniques to get better, and learning something new is always fun to me. But now we should really paint her face, don't you think? So if you've been living under a rock in the past year while Honkai Starrail absolutely exploded into the gaming world, allow me to shine light upon this magnificent RPG for you. With over 100 million downloads since its release, it has won Best Mobile Game at TGA, Best Game for Google Play, and Best Game for the App Store. I guess you can say it's kind of a big deal. But what's so great about this game, Elisa of Moonlight Jewel, you might ask? Well, actually a lot. But to keep it short, Honkai Starrail is a multi-platform space fantasy RPG from HoYoverse, the makers of none other than Genshin Impact. So you know that you are in for a treat. But most of you probably already know about the game. So let's get into some new features for version 3.0. Yay! First of all, and this is huge, let me introduce you to a whole new world called Amphorius. It's a whole new area that draws inspiration from the mythological era of the Mediterranean civilizations. What was once a thriving land now stands at the threshold of destruction, and it's up to you to go on an epic journey to save this crumbling world. The world of Amphorius is also intricately tied to time. Players will experience new gameplay mechanics that are related to time there, including the need to travel between 2 different eras to actually be able to progress the main storyline. That is so cool. And additionally, players can manipulate the timeline of NPCs, which means you can travel back in time to learn more about their personal histories. But if that was not enough, there is even more. You didn't think I would forget about the new characters, would I? Like the one that I'm making in today's video, the Herta, a mysterious, beautiful, ice-typed sorceress with a little bit of a playful side. What captured my attention about her the most, though, is her insanely intricate gothic outfit. I mean, just look at it. The other character is none other than Aglaia, a lightning type character following the path of remembrance. She's noble, she's graceful, and very demure. The absolute epitome of a noble woman, an absolute diva, if you will. Version 3.0 also introduces many new events and also maps for players to explore, along with all the returning characters to the banner pool. A new event, Cosmic Lucky Prize, is also on the way. Test your luck and challenge yourself to win 500,000 Stellar Jades. But guys, this game is huge and this update only makes it bigger. There's so many other things I could talk about, so if this sounds interesting to you, please check out Honkai Starrail. Download the game for free using my link in the description box to experience the new characters and use my limited time redemption code to get 50 Stellar Jade. Thank you so much if you do so, it really supports the channel. And thank you so much Honkai Starrail for trusting me and sponsoring this video. And I think we should continue with Herta now. Ow! Her face is of course pretty massive this time, but I really love her eye shape and little smile. Of course I start by dusting on some glitter first and then add some blushing to her face to give it more depth. Anime faces are always a little flat, and adding some blushing really helps giving the doll a little more dimension. It will never look 100% like the cel-shaded game character because that's just not the way shadows work in reality, but she will look good nonetheless later on, I promise. After sketching out the eyelines and eyebrows with pencils, it was time for my favorite part, lining the eyes with black acrylic paint. But yes, it does require to be steady, but it's always super therapeutic to me. I also lined the middle of her mouth with some brown gouache paint and used the same paint for her eyebrows as well. In the end, she just needs some sparkly shimmers as a final touch, and while she's drying from the final matte varnish layer, let's make her eyes. I printed the eye bases in white resin for her and first added these printed and cut out irises with some uber glue. Then I take some hard UV resin, put it on top of the eyes, spread it with a toothpick, and then for some more life and sparkle in her eyes, add some purple glitter to them. I also ended up adding silver hollow glitter on the bottom and a little glitter catch light as well. I then cure the whole thing in my UV lamp for a minute, and after curing they look absolutely gorgeous. To finish them, I will be using some non-wipe UV top coat and gloss the whole eyes with it. The finished eyes look so sparkly and beautiful, and I also love how the face turned out. And you guys know what that means. Let's finally put the eyes and the face together. Oh my god, I really love her face so much. The purple eyes are so beautiful, and I think thanks to the glitter she looks very lively. And with the face and wig, we conquered the more easy things of this doll actually. Because not gonna lie, I'm a little bit afraid of her outfit. First of all, I need to vectorize an insane amount of fabric prints though, which took me about 2 days in total. And Honkai also was so awesome to provide me with the texture maps and the 3D model, which made things a lot easier. Alright, so before we start with the dress, we kind of need a fabric for the dress, right? And I really couldn't figure out what color this dress actually has, because in some references it looks purple, in some it looks blue, in some it looks black, and I was completely clueless. So I asked Honkai directly, and Honkai confirmed that it is a very dark shade of purple, which is conveniently the only fabric that I don't have. But lucky me, I have some purple textile dye, and I happen to have a very dark navy blue fabric that I might have bought because I thought the dress was blue. And I made a little test already, and it is a very beautiful dark shade of purple now, almost black. Really, really cool, but it's not quite black. So I guess it's time to dye. when analyzing Herta's outfit, I actually became more and more desperate the longer I kept looking at it, because I really had absolutely no idea where to even start making the patterns. I then decided I want to start with the sleeves because they looked terribly difficult, and turns out they are. I didn't even know how to make the first part, which is basically this pleated part in the middle of the sleeve, and I ended up making countless attempts, but nothing really worked, and I ended up spending days trying to figure things out, and I just couldn't make it work. But because I have some amazing friends, my knight in shining armor this time was Barb from Enchantarium. She's an absolute genius in engineering patterns and made the perfect pattern piece for me, which means we can actually now start making the sleeves. When the pleated sleeve pieces were all prepped and cut, I then need to pin the pleats in the correct directions on the whole thing and can then sew them in place so that I can remove the pinning needles. I then add a small strip on top of the pleated pieces as well, and then prep a gray fabric piece with some freezer paper. I iron on the freezer paper onto the fabric, then cut it to the correct size for my laser printer, and then print the design for one of the back sleeve parts to it. It turned out super nice, but to not having to clean up the edge of those pieces, I decided to cut 1mm thin strips for the bottom of the pieces from a super dark blue fabric vinyl, weed it out, and also peel off the printed pieces from the freezer paper, and then iron the strips on in 2 steps. I then very accurately cut out the printed pieces with scissors and also fold them into pleats according to my pattern piece. I steamed the pleats in shape and also hemmed them in place. To take a break from pleating, I decided to make those little keyhole pieces on the front of the sleeves. I cut them from pleather and painted them blue already, and now paint the part for the keyhole black. I then glue them together, and then I cover up the keyhole and airbrush the top piece with a light pink to create a pretty gradient. And then the silver vinyl that I ordered also finally arrived, so I can now finish off the remaining fabric pattern pieces for the sleeves. I also made some black straps for the top pieces of the sleeves from vinyl and PVC. I will show you later on in the video how I made them actually. And now just need to glue the pieces in place according to the little template that I made. When done with that, I also made an upper ruffle with a white and gray fabric strip that I gathered together like this. I also printed a gradient fabric piece for the upper sleeve and now have all the parts ready so that I can finally assemble the sleeves. That's so many pieces. First, I sew the upper ruffle onto the printed piece and then also attach the pleated piece to it on the bottom. I then closed the seam and sew it together along the side seam and decided to add the black straps next with some Uhu glue. The lower sleeve pieces will actually be separate from the rest of the sleeves. It made things much easier this way. I just need to glue the back piece onto the back of the white ruffle piece and then attach the little gradient piece on the violet sleeve parts, and in the end add silver studs, a little ribbon on the side of the sleeves, and a little 3D printed ornament to the top part of the gradient piece to finally completely finish the sleeves. These were by far the most complicated sleeves that I have ever made. My husband actually said that the sleeves themselves already look like a dress, and I agree. They are so pretty though, I think. And things are not about to get easier because now we're gonna make the top of the dress. As said before, I was about to show you how I made the black straps on the sleeves because I need them for the top as well. I basically traced the pattern pieces for them onto some PVC that I had still laying around and then cut everything out. That took quite a minute, but I was done eventually with it, and then take some black self-adhesive vinyl, glue it one strip at a time, cut it out with a little bit of margin around it, then slit the margin with a knife and glue it around the edges of the PVC piece. I also made 2 more small straps in a similar way. And with those prepped pieces, we can finally make the top. When the top was assembled, I then took some prepped pleated strips and simply glued them onto the top of the bra cup, and also took some white fabric pieces to attach them to the back of the top. Just like with the sleeves, I add some silver studs to the black strips. In the end, just some 3D printed elements are missing. For the closure on the back, I already added a Velcro and a pleather circle on top of the top piece, and now just have to glue the hand I already painted to the closure, and last but not least, add the keyhole centerpiece to the middle of the top. I simply glued on with some Uhu Alleskleber, and with that, the top is done and it looks really pretty, I think. It almost looks a bit like an armor piece and I absolutely love it. As you might have noticed, I decided to make top and skirt separate because it just made things easier. To make the underskirt that Herta is wearing, I'm actually going to be printing a lot of fabric again because I didn't have enough time to actually order professionally printed fabric this time. With the pieces all prepped, I now have to sew everything together to one big piece and also cleaned up the bottom seams. And then I have to iron some pleats once again and then just close the back seam of the skirt to finish it off. With this, the underskirt is already done. I just needed to add a closure in the end and used an invisible zipper for that this time. And with the underskirt done, we now need to make the biggest piece of all, the upper skirt belt combo piece. For that, I first need to cut a bunch of vinyls and decided to use this incredibly beautiful glittery blue and gray fabric vinyls. Glitterily beautiful. Aha! The weeding process for this took quite a while, and when I was done, I can then first iron on the blue glitter parts onto the already prepped pattern pieces. Oh my god, look how glittery it is! Ah! I then top off the blue with the dark gray glitter pieces and also iron the vinyl on. In the end, just the chrome silver piece on the bottom is missing. I then have to repeat this whole step 3 more times for the big purple panels, and then also iron on some huge lilac panels with silver fabric vinyl. The size of these panels once again puts into perspective how freaking huge this doll is. Oh boy. But with that, the main pieces for the upper skirt are all prepared now, so I can now start assembling everything. I first need to make the pleated pieces in the front. For those, I layer purple and more printed fabric pieces, sew them finished sides in, cut away the seam allowances, and then turn them inside out. After steaming the seam gently, I then fold them according to my pattern piece and also hem those pleats like I did on the sleeves. With both sides done, I then sew together always 2 of the opposite big panel pieces and will then attach the swag part onto the front of the sewn together skirt side. And then I can take the lilac pattern piece, which will be the lining of the panel, and sew it all the way around the piece until the side seam. And then I do the same thing with a white plain lining piece on the other side of the panel. I also joined the side seams and now cut away the seam allowances again before I can finally turn the whole thing inside out. For the final panels on the back, I prepped some more pleated pieces that I will first attach to the back of this pattern piece before lining it with another lilac panel. The final final piece looks like this, so I can now put it underneath of one of the skirt pieces like this and hem it in place. One final skirt side looks like this, and with the second one and a small pleather strap in the middle as support added, it looks like this, which means we can now attach this ribbon that I made with a few stitches, and of course the thread had to tangle while doing so, and then finish off the ribbon with these small prepped fabric pieces.
Okay, so I've been trying the whole day already to kind of make these weird belt ruffles that she has on top of her skirt. And I really had no idea how to make these work because they don't really make much sense. But I figured that if I take a ring of pleather that I topped underneath with some 1mm EVA foam and then double it with the fabric that is underneath these weird waves and then glue everything in waves onto a strip of pleather, it hopefully should work. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Also, please excuse my wild look today. I'm actually a little bit sick and I have throat pain. I should probably lay down, but I really want to finish this first and then I'm gonna lay down.
Last but not least, I add these silver keys I printed and painted to the side seams and these little buckle pieces with a pleather strap to the back side of the skirt. This finished upper skirt took me around 4 days, I think. The longest part is usually trying to figure out how to even make things and prepping everything, but it was worth the time spent on it, I think. It's so large it barely fits my counter. Once I assemble the doll, I will also attach these tiny little belt pieces that I almost forgot about. But how about we take a break from the difficult pieces and make something easier now? So let's make Herta's choker. I topped some 1mm EVA foam with vinyl for the choker and cut out the shape with my laser cutter. After cutting, I just need to peel off the transfer vinyl and then added a little clear PVC piece to the fingers that will help making the whole thing close. For the closure, I just added a magnet to it. In the end, I just need to add a little white fabric piece, some golden studs and a 3D element to finish it off. I really love the choker of this outfit. It's such a cool design, I think. And I was done with it faster than I thought. I also made Herta some stockings and prepped a handpiece in the same fashion as I did for the choker. This time I just added a silver ornament with silver vinyl to it and then carefully glue it onto the stocking with some contact adhesive. Alright, I guess it's time to make something more complicated again, so let's make Herta's boots. I printed the bases for them already from some leftover resin and first spent 2 hours painting them. For you, I paint them in a split second though, and I actually ended up having fun adding the galaxy background to them. With the shoe bases done, I then take some EVA foam and some very soft, nice pleather and then use my beloved and behated Sprühkleber to fuse together the foam pieces and the pleather. After doing so, I cut everything with seam allowances, cleaned up the back seams, and could then finally start building the actual boots. Recovered from hammering in those eyelets, I can now finally glue the boot pieces onto some cardboard soles that I already prepped. I cut the seam allowances of the boots into triangles so it won't get too bulky underneath, and when I was done I attached some contact adhesive and a little tongue piece to the base of the shoe and the bottom of the sole and then joined them together once the glue is dry to the touch. To make the final big ruffle on top, I decided to lace the shoes on the legs of the doll so I could determine the correct length of the ruffle, and then prep 2 ruffle pieces the same way as I did on the shoe and simply glue them around the shoe, but of course leave them open in the back since there is the zipper. They turned out really nice, so in the end I simply need to make a little belt piece that I can then glue along the middle piece of the just attached ruffle. And of course the little golden ornaments can't be missing either. With the ornaments glued, the shoes are finally finished and I absolutely love them. It's super cool that one of Herta's boots is longer than the other. Haven't really seen that before. The ruffles were a real challenge, but I like them a lot, although my personal highlight are the bottom of the soles. I just love the galaxy skies. With the shoes done, there is just one big piece of her outfit missing. Her big witch hat. I first wanted to make the brim and decided to cut it from 2mm high density EVA foam to give it a good thickness. With an X-Acto, it was an easy task. I then prepped a bedazzled fabric the same way as I did on the skirt of the dress, and now fuse the foam and the fabric together with spray adhesive again. I then need to cut back the seam allowances and flip them around so I can create a clean edge. For the underside of the brim, I had to iron some white vinyl on lilac fabric and then need to clean up all the edges on it before I can finally glue the cleaned up pattern piece onto the underside of the brim. With the brim prepped, I now need to make the rest of the hat and first need to cut a bunch of pattern pieces for it from EVA foam. And then I assemble them until I have a cool witch hat looking cone. I then cleaned up the glued seams with some gesso and then made the mistake of sanding it with a power tool. It looked a bit lumpy afterwards, so I needed to undo that damage by covering the whole thing in multiple layers of PVA glue. When it was all dried up and smooth, I could then paint it in a lilac base color and then add violet and blue gradients to it with my airbrush. I'm really starting to enjoy using an airbrush, not gonna lie. For the little stars, I then painted dots with my white Posca marker onto the hat. The final cone of the witch hat looks pretty nice, which means we can now finally make all the little hands for it and finally finish this hat, and with that, the whole project as well. The final hat is just so cool. I was a bit scared of making it because I never made a hat in that scale before, but it turned out really gorgeous, I think. In the end, I then just needed to make Herta's little key necklace and the small clock she wears around her waist. And with these 2 final accessories, this insane project is finally coming to an end. I was working for around 5 weeks on this doll, and I even got sick in the meantime, you might hear it. And this doll is by far the most intricate and detailed Hoyoverse character I have ever made, and finally assembling her just made me so happy. Oh my god, guys, she's all put together and I can't believe I'm finally finished with this project, but I'm pretty sure you're super excited to see her, so let's not make you wait any longer. Presentation time! Woohoo! 夢を my Herta doll. I can't believe I was able to make her in just 5 weeks, and I'm so happy how she looks like, especially next to my runmate. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I surely had a blast making her. And if you really liked it, I would be so happy if you could share it with all your Honkai Starrail fans. Also, thanks again to Honkai Starrail for sponsoring this video and trusting me. The next video is going to be absolutely ghoulishly fantastic and gigantic. Alright, see you soon. Bye!